Alright, hello everyone. Today we have another bracket video. So, if you saw the last one, we did Kanye West Madness bracket ranking the 64 best Kanye West songs. And today we're going to be doing Kid Cudi. So, let's just jump right into it. You can see here we have the four brackets just like we did in the last video, the four divisions, I should say. We got Man on the Moon, Cleveland, Kids See Ghosts, and Indicud. So, this one, I apologize, this one's a little grainier. The images are, I don't know, this image wasn't really as clean as the first one I got for the Kanye West bracket, but anyway, it'll do. You can still read what it says. So anyway, like we did for the last one, we're just gonna be going left to right, top to bottom, and yeah, okay. So if you see in the first bracket, we have Day and Night versus The Mood, and this one obviously I think for many was a no-brainer, so I had to go with Day and Night. It's just a classic. Next we had Screwed versus Immortal. Oh, and also for a lot of these songs, like with the last one, I hadn't, like being honest, I hadn't really heard them before. So I spent the last few weeks, last week, I'd say just like listening to them over and over again. Some of them I remembered, I'd heard once or twice, and I liked again, but some of them I didn't really care for. So we'll get into which ones those were as we go through this bracket. So anyway, going on to Screwed versus Immortal, I had to go with Immortal on that one. Just again, I feel like that song's more classic for me. I didn't really like his Speed and Bullet to Heaven record. I think a lot of people feel the same way, but I didn't really care for it. Next we had The Prayer versus My World, and that was another easy one for me, as The Prayer I think is a great song. I love it. I love that the beat he has, like the sample for it, that guitar. It's really, really nice to listen to, so I went with that. And then we had Cudi Montage versus Does It, and that was an easy pick. It was Cudi Montage, so those are those updates there. Next we had King Wizard versus Simple As, and this one was a little trickier as I'd heard each song, but I didn't really they weren't either my go-to for like Kid Cudi songs. It wasn't nearly like I'd say in like my top 10. But I do enjoy both. They're both pretty good, but I had to go with Simple As because I feel like it's a little more classic Kid Cudi. It's a little more energetic. It's got more of his like signature kind of flows. His what he talks about is a little more like of the older him, what he made himself known for. Versus King Wizard, which I just think is a little, I don't know, it's kind of like a failed ego that he tried to go for, in my opinion. So I had to go Simple As. Next we have By Design versus Cudi Spazzin', and that's another song off, Cudi Spazzin's another one off A Kid Named Cudi. And I had to go with By Design as I didn't really care for that one. I do like A Kid Named Cudi, but there are just some songs that fall a little bit flat for me. So anyway, we went with By Design. I went with By Design. Next was Trapped in My Mind and Have to Destroy You Now, and I went with Trapped in My Mind. And then finally in the Man on the Moon division, it was Soundtrack to My Life versus Illusions, and that was, again, an easy one. Soundtrack to My Life is just a classic, so there are those updates. Moving on to the Cleveland division, we have Erase Me versus Kitchen, and I do enjoy both songs, but I think Erase Me just wasn't difficult to choose. I went with that one as it's a great anthem. I love Kanye West in that song. It's really uplifting and just a good Cudi anthem, so I went with that. Next we have Heart of a Lion versus Unfuckwittable, and again I do enjoy both songs and almost equally, but Unfuckwittable just slightly edges out Heart of a Lion for me. And then moving on from that, we have Surfin' against These Worries, and I didn't really care for either song. I'd heard both of them, but I listened to them again just before making this video, and I don't really care for either of them. But I just went with These Worries because I liked it slightly more, but again, not either my go-to. Next, we have Fire versus Speed and Bullet to Heaven, and that was an easy one. I went with Fire as I just love the Kids See Ghosts album, and again, like I said, I don't really care for the Speed and Bullet to Heaven one, and it's just a better song all around. Those are those updates there. Next is Solo Dolo versus Solo Dolo Part 2. And let's just see what I went with. I went with Solo Dolo Part 2. Next was Fourth Dimension versus Scott Mescudi versus The World. And again, Fourth Dimension was the easy pick. I just love the Kids See Ghost tape. And yeah, so now going on to Sky Might Fall versus Down and Out. That's another song off A Kid Named Cudi, a Down and Out. But I had to go with Sky Might Fall as I like The Man on the Moon, his first album, a lot more than A Kid Named Cudi, as I'm sure a lot of other people do. And then finally we have Mr. Rager versus Higher, and that was no competition. Mr. Rager is one of my all-time favorite Kid Cudi songs, which I'll get more into later, so we went with that. Now going into the Kid Cudi Ghost bracket. Pursuit of Happiness versus Brothers. That was a no-brainer. Pursuit of Happiness is just such a classic. It's a staple. It's a great party song. And I don't know anyone who doesn't love that song. Just everyone can get down to that. So we went with that. Next was Ghost versus Frequency, and I'm not a big fan of either song, but I went with Ghost. Then Mojo So Dope versus Flight at First Sight. That was an easy pick for me as I went with Mojo So Dope. I was a really big fan of that song. I'd say like maybe around like this time last year. I remember just playing it a lot, and it's got a good, obviously, like mojo to it. It's got a good kind of good like rhythm. I just really enjoy that song. I don't really care for Flight at First Sight. Next was Kid Cudi Ghost versus Young Lady, and I'd say Kid Cudi Ghost is probably my least favorite song off the Kid Cudi Ghosts album. Like it's they're all so great, but I think the other ones just rank a lot higher for me. But I didn't really care for Young Lady, so I still went with Kid Cudi Ghost on that one because it's still listenable, but I just prefer all the other songs off that album a lot more. And those are those updates. Next was Cudi Zone versus Cudi Get, and I went with Cudi Zone. It's a good song. I can always get down with that one. Then Reborn versus Swim in the Light, and this one was a little tricky because I do really enjoy both songs, but I think Reborn had to come over Swim in the Light for me just because it's it brings such good awareness to things like mental health and like second chances, and it's such a great second coming, like piece of revival for both artists. They both come together and it really just blends so well, and like the message they're sending out to their audience is just so profound. So I had to go with that. And there's nothing else, like there's hardly songs like that talk so thoroughly and so like emphatically about mental health. So I went with that. Next was Up Up and Away versus Girls. There's no competition. Up Up and Away is another classic that off of Man in the Moon. And then we had Marijuana versus Dance for Eternity, and I went with Marijuana even though I don't really care for either song that much. I think they're kind of annoying, to be honest. But Dance for Eternity has some nice humming on it, but no, I listened to Marijuana a few more times. It's just okay, but I don't really care for either. Those are those updates. Okay, now the final bracket, the Indicud bracket. First was between Just What I Am and Wound, and I went with Just What I Am. It's one of my favorite Kid Cudi songs. I really enjoy it. Even though it doesn't really, it's just a song about weed. I think it's really catchy. It's really fun. And that's just, I don't really care for Wound. And then was Alive versus Rose Gold. And again, that was an easy pick, as Alive is up there with my favorite Kid Cudi songs. I love the rat-a-tat production, the sampling they have, like the beats in that song. And just like all the instrumentals you have going on in the background from Rat-a-Tat, I think Kid Cudi and Rat-a-Tat go really well together, so I always enjoy listening to that song. Next was Make Her Say versus Red Eye, and I went with Make Her Say. It's just another great track off of Man on the Moon. I love Kanye West on that song. I love the beat, and yeah, it's a nice song. It makes me smile, so I went with that. Next was Man on the Moon versus Intergalactic, and this one wasn't hard. I went on with Man on the Moon. I like Intergalactic, but I think Man on the Moon is just better in every regards. I don't know, it wasn't really that tricky. And those are those updates. Now, going under Revofev, however you say that, versus Satellite Flight, I went with Revofev because it's just a great song off Man on the Moon too, and I don't really care for that Satellite Flight album, so I went with that one. Next was Feel the Love versus All In. And Feel the Love is another song off Kid Cudi Ghost that I didn't really care for as much. Like, I enjoyed it, but it's just its other songs I felt resonate a lot more with me. But again, it's just all the songs there I think are still great, and it's dominant over a lot of the songs that are, I think, in my opinion, on Kid Cudi's newer albums. So I had to go with Feel the Love. Next was All Along versus Confused, and I ended up going with All Along, even though I don't really care for either song. And then Baptized in Fire versus Burn Baby Burn. I went with Baptized in Fire because it's a cool song. Kid Cudi and Travis Scott on it. It's a nice instrumental, but yeah. Anyway, so those are those updates. Okay, now moving on to the next round, we have Day and Night versus Immortal, and I went with Day and Night as it's just a classic. It's a Kid Cudi staple. We had The Prayer versus Cudi Montage, and this one was very, very, very difficult for me. Like this one was very tricky because as I really love both songs. So picking this was definitely the hardest decision in this whole video. The Prayer is great writing. It's that energetic, enthusiastic character Cudi that we've had since he started back in 2008, 2009, and it's really enjoyable. I love that like rapping, energetic feel he has. It's just so full of enthusiasm. I like that's my favorite Cudi. Definitely preferred over like the new kind of wave singing Cudi. Even kind of the Cudi that's even on Cudi Montage, but I think personally that just the chemistry he has with Kanye West over that song, his humming that goes over it, the instrumental, and him vocalizing the background verse while Kanye West is singing the outro to that song. I think that the chemistry is just undeniable, and it's such a perfect blend of just talent. I couldn't turn that one down, so I had to go with Cudi Montage on that. All right, next I had to go with it was between Simple As and By Design. And I do enjoy By Design. I think it's a good beat. It's energetic. It's uplifting. But Simple As is more classic Cudi for me. Just the themes are a lot more like what Kid Cudi is at heart for me. And it's one I'm definitely a fan of his older work versus his newer albums. So I had to go with Simple As. The next we had Trapped in My Mind versus Soundtrack to My Life. And Soundtrack to My Life is just a classic. It's a song I've been playing. Like I just play on. I've been playing over the past few years. It never gets old. It's very enjoyable. So, and it's a classic, so I have to go with that one. There are those updates. Now, next we have Erase Me versus Kitchen, it was Unfuckwittable versus Erase Me. And I went with Erase Me because it's just a classic off of Man on the Moon 2 with Kanye West. It's just a good party song. It's really uplifting, and it's nice to listen to. It's even a little bit funny too, so I went with that. Even though it's not as classic as some of his other songs, I think it's a little more iconic than Unfuckwittable. Next was These Worries versus Fire, and Fire again. I'm a big sucker for that Kid Cudi Ghost tape, so I had to go with Fire. Just great chemistry on that. Next was Fourth Dimension versus Solo Dolo Part 2. Again, Fourth Dimension is just a banger. It's a great beat, great samples, some great bars from both Kanye West and Kid Cudi. I think when those two get together, there's nothing else comes close, so I had to go with that. Now, next we have, sorry, let me just check my list here. We had Down and Out versus Mr. Rager, and I definitely had to go with Mr. Rager. As I said earlier, that is one of my all-time favorite Kid Cudi songs, and I couldn't turn that one down. So there are those updates. Going on to Kid Cudi Ghost, Pursuit of Happiness versus Ghost. That was easy. Pursuit of Happiness, just classic. Mojo So Dope over Kid Cudi Ghost. I went with Mojo So Dope because I feel like that song resonates a lot more with me than Kid Cudi Ghost does. Even though it's off the Kid Cudi Ghost tape, I just like Mojo So Dope more. Cudi Get versus Reborn. I had to go with Reborn. Just a stronger message, I think, than you could argue that it's probably his song with the strongest message, even for Kanye West too. Just talking about mental health and being like literally being reborn. So I think that song's really beautiful. So I had to go with that. And then Up and Away versus Marijuana. That was easy. I went with Up and Away. Just a song I enjoy a lot more. So there are those updates. Now moving on to the final division, Indicud. For this round, we have Just What I Am versus Alive. And this one was a bit tricky as I do enjoy both songs very, very much. But I had to go with Alive because it just resonates a little bit more with me. And I remember playing it a lot more than I did Just What I Am. Just the instrumentals I enjoy a lot more. And even the writing, I think, is just a little more, it touches home more for me. So we went with that. Next was Make Her Say versus Man on the Moon. And this was tricky as well because I love the beat, I love the sampling on Man on the Moon, but Make Her Say is just more of a bump, it's more catchy, it's more energetic, it's more like a party song, and it's more of like a feel good track, so I went with that. Then going on to Revafev versus Feel the Love, I went with Revafev. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of either song, I like that one. I liked Revafev slightly more. Then we had All Along versus Baptized in Fire, and I went with All Along, which again, I'm not really a big fan of either song, but that one just slightly etched out for me. So those are those updates there. Now moving on to the next round, we have Day and Night versus Cudi Montage, and this one was a bit tricky, but I didn't really ponder too long on this one. I had to go with Day and Night. It's a staple in Kid Cudi's discography, and definitely wouldn't be here today without that song. I think it's just great. It's such a classic. It's always, no matter like how much time goes by, you can always go back and listen to that song. It's just it's a good jam. So went with that. And then Simple as was Soundtrack to My Life. Again, just Soundtrack to My Life is more iconic, and it's more that Kid Cudi at heart, what his true messages have always been. So I went with that. And those updates for Cleveland, Erase Me versus Fire. Let's see what I went with. I went with Fire because that Kid Cudi Ghost tape. Just that song just kind of blended a little bit better for me than Erase Me did, even though it has the same people on it. The instrumentals and the writing is just a bit better on that one. Fourth Dimension versus Mr. Rager. I went with Mr. Rager. There we go. Now for Kid Cudi Ghost, Pursuit of Happiness versus Mojo So Dope. Just see what I went with, because this one was a bit tricky, but I had to go with Pursuit of Happiness because it's just, again, it's one of those, it's just like Day and Night. He wouldn't be here today without that song, and it was really groundbreaking. So, and then Reborn versus Up Up and Away. I feel like both songs have a similar message, but Reborn's goes a little bit deeper, and Reborn is a more unique track, so I had to go with Reborn. And then between Alive and Make Her Say, Alive is the song I went with, and All Along and Revafev, I went with Revafev. Okay, now going back to Man on the Moon, Day and Night versus Soundtrack to My Life. Let's see, I went with Soundtrack because I think the message hits a little bit closer to home for me personally, even though they're both classics. Fire versus Mr. Rager. I went with Mr. Rager, so there we go. Pursuit of Happiness versus Reborn. I had to go with, let's see. I had to go with Reborn, and then Alive versus Revafev. I had to go with Alive. Okay, so this is a tricky point because all these songs I love very much. They're all very near and dear to my heart. They're all very, very enjoyable. So, and like I said in the last video, I'd recommend any of them to anybody. They all have their own unique message. They're all, I think, innovative in their way, and they're all just so moving to listen to. So if we start on the left first, Soundtrack to My Life and Mr. Rager. It was tough, but I had to go with Mr. Rager as that song kind of hits me in a way that nothing else can, and I don't know how or I don't know why, but I don't know. I just remember first listening to it and just really moved me in a way that nothing else ever did. So yeah, I had to go with that. Between Reborn and Alive, this one was really tough as well because, as I said, Reborn's message is just pure gold. It's just so beautiful to listen to, and it's so like tear invoking. But Alive was actually, like, remembering last year, Alive was the song I listened to most on Spotify last year, and I have to think it's for a reason, obviously, because I just love it's like Kid Cudi and Rat-a-Tat is a big the chemistry they hold there is great. And I just remember listening to Kid Cudi a lot when I was a kid, Rat-a-Tat a lot when I was a kid, and I know my dad was a big fan of them, so listening to them team up with an artist that I'm listening to now is just a great, like, it's something that's really special, and I don't think that's something you can find with a lot of these other songs. So I had to go with Alive. And then finally getting down to it, as I love both these songs so much, they're both so great. They both are great in their own way, but one did kind of etch out supreme over the rest. For me personally, I don't know about how other people feel, but that song for me was Mr. Rager. So I had to go with that because it's, like I said, it's everything it says. It's a song about him battling his addiction, him fighting with an alter ego, him self-actualizing with himself. He doesn't go nearly as in depth. He does somewhat do that on Reborn, but he doesn't do it nearly in the same way that he does on Mr. Rager, or do it how do you say, like, how like profoundly he does it on this song. It's really emotional. It's really thought-provoking. It really makes you reflect on yourself, but the way he confronts his own demons, the way he confronts his own addiction, his own problems, how it shows, and it also shows in this one song how addiction can really affect a person, especially a person who is famous like him, how it affects your friends around you, how it affects your work, how it affects your passions. It's really emotional. It's really moving. So anyway, I had to go with Mr. Rager. So that's my number one pick. I'm proud to say Mr. Rager is my favorite Kid Cudi song. Now, like I said, for the last one, I recommend all of you go out and do this challenge. It's really fun. I know they have a lot of these out for plenty of artists out there. These, I mean, Kanye West and Kid Cudi are the only people I've really listened to enough of their music to do a challenge like this. But anyway, I'm sure you can find a lot of other artists out there. And again, like even with the last bracket video for Kanye West, I'm sure a lot of his songs here are missing. Like Kid Cudi hasn't really released an album in a while. He's not as consistent as Kanye West, but I'm sure there's a few of his songs. Like if your favorite song's not on this list, it's all right. But anyway, that's I think they narrowed it down pretty good here. And yeah, it's just a fun challenge. So okay, bye.